don't make my mistakes. So I've lost like $7,400 from just being dumb, not realizing like when to fire people, hiring from countries that I shouldn't have hired from, being super cheap, not aligning on requirements. Like I've lost like a ton of money essentially by being stupid. Here's like the 5 mistakes that I've made that you won't make, and hopefully you'll save thousands of dollars by not making these mistakes and doing what I did. But some of these rules are really hard to follow. Just because if you see somebody for $2 an hour, I mean, how can you say no to just trying them? But trust me, I'm done. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. There's a reason they're $2 an hour. Okay, so let's get into it. First rule, don't be cheap. So you see somebody for $2 an hour, $4 an hour, you're like, man, for like $100, I could like get them to do so much stuff. I could have them do like this, that, or the other. And the reality is, if they're that low cost, their English is probably not very good. They probably don't know a lot. They're super junior, and you're gonna waste a lot of time. Like, I think the most important thing I've learned by being super cheap and then like overcorrecting and being super not cheap, like paying a lot more than I thought I should, is that the expensive people are typically cheaper. Yeah, expensive people who are like $100 an hour are normally cheaper than somebody who's like $2 an hour. And the reason is because this expensive person knows what they're doing. You can say, hey, can you go do this? And then you look over and like it's the same day and they're done. And you're like, oh, I did not expect that to be finished so quickly. And then you pay them like whatever for 3 hours and you're done with the project. You get like a $2 person and they're just spinning in circles, until like you step in and you're like, what's happening? And then they won't tell you, or they just will try to act like they did more stuff than they did. And then it takes you a while to realize they didn't do anything. And not only did you spend like whatever, like maybe $100 on this person, but you just wasted so much of your own time getting nothing done. So don't be cheap. It's such a hard rule to follow. I routinely break it, and it's every time I break it, I regret it. But like, don't fall into the trap. As hard as it is, when you see that $2, $4, $5 person, it's not worth it. Yeah, don't do it. It's how you lose all the money. Because you're cheap, you're like, oh, I'll hire a blog writer for $15 a blog. $15 a blog because their blogs are bad. And their bad blogs are not going to get you traffic. They're going to get you to have customers who come, read the blog, and be like, what is this brand? What is this company? I'm trusting this company with my money? Very important. Number one thing, don't be cheap. Don't be cheap. Hire good, expensive people because they're faster. Like when I first graduated college, back in like 2016, I was working at Expedia, and I had like my own superhost company as an Airbnb host. I had like 5 different apartments I was renting. That was like doing pretty well. I didn't need to find a job, so I was trying to do some freelancing. And so I freelanced for this guy for like, I charged him like $30 an hour. I had no idea what I was doing back then. Like I didn't understand how to use the tools. Like I knew how to design stuff okay, but I wasn't like very quick. So I think I charged this guy for like 200 hours to make 2 apps, to design 2 apps for him. And I'm looking back at myself like now and I'm like, man, I could probably do that same thing for like triple the hourly cost for probably like 30 hours. So I would save like 90% of the time just because I know what I'm doing now. Like I'm a much better designer. I know how to use the tools. I know what the workflow. I've done this like 20, 30 times at this point. Yes, he got a cheap designer for $30 an hour, but the expensive designer that I am now, like 4 years later, is that like I can do the same thing way better and way faster and probably way cheaper because now I know how to actually make that guy more money. So when the app goes live, it doesn't just like done, but now it's like has like viral loops, it has marketing, it has all these different features that like now I know to put into products to help sell them. So yeah, you might be getting a cheap designer or a cheap developer or whatever you want, but the reality is that inexperienced person doesn't know how to like make you more money. Yeah, I know I'm harping on this a lot, but it's so important, and the older I get, the more I appreciate just really good. Another important thing is hire from good countries. Now you don't really have a good handle on this when you're first starting out, and especially if you're going with a cheap route, which is what I did, and I was like, ooh, this guy is only like $5 to develop my app? $5 an hour. Like, okay, let's do it. Yeah, a big part of that is also the country. So you can hire somebody for like $15 in the US and they're gonna be probably not very good. You can hire from somebody like $15 in the Philippines and they're going to be out of this world amazing, best people you've ever worked with. Because that $15 an hour in the Philippines is like a huge amount of money. I think an average factory worker makes $8 a day. So if you're paying somebody double that per hour, I don't know what the equivalent would be, but I think they're doing pretty well. So the point is, hire from good countries and don't be cheap in that country. So even though $15 in the US might seem like not much money, or it isn't much money in the US, $15 an hour in like Philippines is like a lot of money. So if somebody's at that salary, they're doing pretty well. They're worth a lot. So just keep that in mind. Another important thing is when you're hiring from good countries, you get a better handle of this as you hire more people, but some countries have different work cultures than others. So for instance, like Ukraine, Russia, like those countries are fantastic for developers. They typically work like 9 to 5. They're not going to work too much on the weekend. They just have a different work culture than say like an individual freelancer in the US who is just going to get the job done. They might stay up all night. They'll do whatever it takes to get that job done for you as soon as possible. Just different work cultures. Japan is the same way. It's something that's important to realize and kind of gauge your expectations, because different countries are going to be vastly different in how they communicate and how you work with them. Another thing is some countries you just shouldn't hire from. It's not because those people are necessarily bad, it's just because there's a lot of scammers. So just keep that in mind. Some countries are just best to avoid, especially if you're at the lower price tier. They're going to pay $100 to $200 an hour, or just essentially pay at the premium. You're going to find good people everywhere. I think good people are always charging that, and if they have good reviews to back it up, those reviews are normally awesome reviews, just saying like how stellar and revolutionary and transformational that person was. And that's normally the case. Like every time I've hired this expensive $100 an hour person, they've just knocked it out of the park. They've done so much more than I could have ever dreamed they would have been able to do. Because it's also like, I don't know a lot of fields. There's so much I don't know, that's why I'm hiring these people. And these people who are in depth, this is all they do, those people are so good that they're like, it's hard to even like really truly articulate how revolutionary some of the things that they can do are. Like, I remember we hired this email marketing person at one of the startups I was helping out. And this lady just like, she set up all these email funnels, she set up all this segmentation for the audience to send different emails to different people depending on what they're doing. Like all this like convoluted email marketing funnel stuff, which I didn't even know about at the time. She was amazing. She made her cost back like tenfold, easy. So that's what you get when you get an expensive person. So just kind of realize that if you hire a $100 an hour person in India, that person is doing something right, especially if they have the reviews to back it up. But if you hire like a $2 person in India, you should have high expectations. So just realize that. Another thing is to fire quickly. You can't always fire people who are in line with what you want. Typically, I find that especially with blog writers, if the style is not right, it's not worth trying to make a fit where there isn't a fit. It's better just to fire quickly while you still have that job active on Upwork, and then pick somebody else from the pool. And because of this fire quickly thing, that firing people, especially if you close the job, takes so much time, because then you have to restart the job, you have to re-get the applicants, you have to re-vet everybody, as opposed to keeping the job open and then having like your 3 or 4 people that have already been vetted. And like if this person just it's not a good fit, then you just draw from that pool that you still have. So super important to realize. And it's also good for both people. If something's not fitting, essentially like for me, like if I'm hiring, especially blog writers, I find I have the highest churn there. If I'm hiring a blog writer and I'm having to do more work editing their stuff than it would have taken me to just write the blog article myself, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So why would I have this person write things that I don't want to edit? Like I'm hiring them to save me time. If it's not working, it's not working. It's not their fault. Like maybe the style is different. I've hired a couple blog writers from Nigeria. They have like fantastic English, but the style of the English is different than what I'm used to and what I think sounds right. So it doesn't work. It's not their fault, it's just that my style is slightly different than what they're writing. So just realize that firing quickly is going to save you more time, because trying to make something fit that doesn't fit is going to waste so much time. It just doesn't make sense. So as a result of also having to fire a lot of people like designers and blog writers because the fit wasn't right, like either the aesthetic wasn't quite correct or whatever it was, there's some type of fit issue, then I've started asking for free work, which for me is like, I hate when people ask for free work. Like if somebody wants to see if they want to work together and they ask me for free work, I'm just like, it's so much work. It's obviously a lot of work. It's only like, especially for product managers, like they're typically asking for some type of take home. Those things typically take like 10 to 20 hours. So it's a lot of work. But I found that asking for free work from a designer or from a blog writer or anybody is such an effective strategy to not have to go through that firing cycle and then rehiring cycle. So as much as it pains me to suggest this, I think it actually works really well. Since I've been doing this, I've hired some of the best people I've ever found. And one of the things that you see when you ask for free work is you have like maybe 5 people submit some free work. A lot of people won't, maybe like 20% of people won't submit anything. But of those 80% that do submit free work, whichever person's the best is going to just outshine the others by such a large margin that it's so obvious to hire them. Whereas if someone's submitting their portfolio, it's kind of hard to tell. But when you get free work, it makes it so much easier to hire people. When you look at the work, if it's blog writing, if it's customer support, if it's anything really, the best person is so easy to spot when you get that free work. Interesting advice that I found out kind of late in the game. I only found this out maybe 6 months ago, that asking for free work is like a little hack to get really good people that you can work with for a long time. And then finally, alignment requirements. Super important. It seems kind of obvious, but if you don't align on requirements and the people get to a certain requirement or a certain part of the project and I realize oh crap, this is way more work than I expected, it's gonna be bad. It's gonna be really bad. Essentially, you're not gonna be able to go forward. Either you have to pay more money, which you're not gonna like, or this person is not gonna wanna work anymore, which no one's gonna like. So if you make sure that they've read the requirements, often one of the questions I have is, do you have any concerns? Or sometimes I'll even ask what is bullet 3 in the requirements? Or bullet 3A or whatever it is. And then they copy paste that sentence. I don't know how effective that is. Sometimes I ask them to summarize, but since I've been doing that, I haven't had any issues with requirements. But if you have issues with requirements, that's really bad. That's like a showstopper. Either you have to pay more money or they stop working. And the only project I've had that failed in the last 3 or 4 years has been one where the guy didn't properly understand the requirements and I didn't properly make sure that he understood them. He was enthusiastic about the project and I should have double checked that he understood everything. And I also should have negotiated so aggressively. So with him, it's tough because I knew he didn't have work, so I took a bit of advantage on that. But as a result, the project failed. I've lost $100, so not too bad because of the fixed price milestones. But the end result is this project, which I spent maybe $100 on design, maybe 10 hours of my own time doing the requirements, and then working with him to go through the algorithm and everything to ultimately have it fail. It's a huge amount of wasted time. Wasted money is not such a big deal, but wasted time is huge. Such an important thing, and it's essentially because I failed to properly align on requirements. And time is the biggest thing that you're going to lose with every mistake. Okay, in summary, don't be cheap, hire from good countries, fire quickly, ask for free work before you hire the person or decide who to hire, and then make sure you're aligned on requirements before you send that offer, before they accept the offer. Super, super important. And then you won't lose countless weeks and thousands of dollars because you didn't know what you were doing and you did stupid mistakes that I already made for you. Just saying.